Alrighty, we shall start. Um, Again, thank you everyone for joining us on week 5 of the Cavu group, as well as the Village Collective. Speaking about diversity and inclusion issues that not only affect us during this pandemic, but has affected us through history. Um, if Leslie gives me the heads up, I'll do her bio. I'll read through her bio again, but I don't think we need that.
No, we're just,
So,
I'll do
yeah.
a quick thing and keep moving.
So again, my name is Michael Lewis. Basically, the creator of the Village Collective that organizes these webinars as well. And just want to give some ground rules about how this webinar will work today. Through the discussion, if you have any questions, please pull up the chat function on there on here and subsequently put your number down, and I will call upon you to unmute your mic and to ask your question and have your conversation. I will do ask that you keep it to a minimum on your question, because I will put you back on mute again at that point, so we can make sure everyone's questions gets answered in this discussion. But yeah, so for example, first person who has a question, just put number 1, second person, number 2, so on and so forth. And yeah, with that being said, I will turn it over to Leslie to get us started here.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Leslie Short. I'm the owner of the Cavu Group. I think most of you know I work with companies and organizations to work with people to expand beyond their current culture through the diversity and inclusion lens, which encompasses anything that has to do with disabilities, LGBTQ, plus, race, gender, all under my umbrella, company culture. I'm going to jump in. I will mess up his system on questions. Just so you're aware, he will yell at me later, but that's okay. I like this to be interactive. I tell you to start putting your LinkedIn addresses in to connect. I love for this to be a conversation and not me being a talking head. So I'm going to kick it off by, this is a extension of last week's conversation a bit, which was really about women in the workplace. Are we just checking the boxes on diversity and inclusion? Are white women the new face of diversity and inclusion? Do men even care if women are in the office? And today I wanted to expand on is representation matter? And that means diversity and disabilities. It means race. It means gender. It means LGBTQ. And so I'm going to do that by just running off a few things for us to discuss. When I start thinking about this, here's the things that came to mind. I posted, if you saw the LinkedIn post, about the female judge in the UK who checked every single box for everyone. African American, so female, African American, lesbian, judge, disabilities, like she had everything. So she represented a full circle of a lot that was going on there. Then we have the valedictorian from Princeton, who was the first African American valedictorian in the history of Princeton, which is crazy. Then you have RuPaul from back in the day that started with drag queens, and you have shows that are now in prime time with drag queens. You have Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. You have Off the Boat for Asians. You have Crazy Rich Asians. You have Target as one of the companies that I feel that has done a great job at representation, not only in just the products that they bought in, but in their advertising. Then you have Martella, who I'm in love with every Barbie that they've come out with in this last year and a half, that has really represented, I feel represented not only our society or where we are today, but just mixing it up. And then does representation matter? The doctors you go to, the nurses that take care of you, the educators that are teaching yourself or your children or your friends. What does that look like, and what does that feel like? So again, everyone can start asking questions and jumping in and commenting, and this is not a wait to the end. This is we're having a community conversation, because in order for representation to matter, we need to have a voice in what matters. Because if you look at advertising agencies, or if you look at companies in the way that they hire, people go with what they're comfortable with. Nothing wrong with that, But the simple fact of the matter is, if we're supposed to be a diverse society, which we are, but why are we so segmented within our diversity? It's okay for this person to do that and they can represent that, but you can't be the CEO unless it's your own company, or you can't be the VP, or you can't even get to manager unless you go to college and get these 15 degrees and then come back and maybe then we'll check the box. Does it make a difference if you walk in a store and you have a disability and you see someone, and this is a disability that's seen because this disability is clearly seen and unseen? Does that make you want to shop and spend your money? And so this goes back to another webinar that we had about where are you spending your money. If you see companies representing who you are, do you patronize them more? So anyone can jump in again now. And I have my questions up, so I can't see if there's something.
Oh, sorry. Kim put a question up here. And Kim, just FYI, I'm gonna unmute your mic, but just put it to everyone. You sent it to me privately. But
Hi, everybody. My point to Leslie about representation, I know that most of my African American friends, the females, they do prefer a Black doctor. I have a friend in Florida. She has MS. Now, the first doctor that she went to, they had misdiagnosed her. She went to another doctor who was a Black female doctor, and she gave her a whole laundry list of things that she should do that was never on the list of the doctor that she went to before. The other thing, representation, is that I also had friends who had some female issues, and they went to Caucasian doctors who were not as sympathetic and automatically wanted to put them on the list for surgery. When they went to either Hispanic or either a Black doctor, they definitely had other options for them, not necessarily surgery. It could be diet change. It could be stress level. It could be putting them on medications. That's one of the things I think medically is that one of the things that we don't get enough representation.
So I also think I've never had a Black doctor.
Okay.
I lived in Europe for 13 and a half years in Asia, so I was the only one in the country. So if I was looking for one, that wasn't going to happen, 9 out of 10. So, I think it's an individual thing. Of course, you hear the stories. You hear from, I'm going to throw out celebrities since everyone, you hear from Serena Williams that she needed to advocate for herself. I just got off a webinar with a politician, African-American politician, who said his wife almost died giving twins because the doctors did not believe that she was in pain. And so it is kind of a history thing that some doctors have not taken, women as a whole symptoms, and then African-American and Hispanic women's symptoms seriously. So yes, I think having options is always your personal choice. So I want to have options. The thing is, then do you go around going, where is the LGBTQ doctor? Maybe because there are parts of you that you may want to be able to share that you feel that someone else can connect to. I personally just need you to be the best that you can be at what you do and not annoy me. And if you know me, that means, let's keep it moving. That's the type that I want. Do I want to see more Hispanic doctors, African-American doctors, Indian doctors, Latino? I want to see brilliant people doing brilliant things. That's my first thought. Go ahead. I'll get you. Go ahead.
I just want to add to that what Kim was saying as well too, and I think that for me, I think representation does matter, especially when it comes to not only your physical health from a medical doctor, but from your mental health from a psychiatrist or a therapist. And I speak from a personal experience where I was going through some things at work where the reason why I couldn't tell anybody at work, and I'll be fully transparent and tell you what the situation was. Being a Black male, going through these past few years where on the news, you're seeing people that look like you get gunned down in the streets. I couldn't go to my company, that's 3,000 employees when I was in corporate America, and speak to my supervisor who did not look like me, complete opposite of me, and say, hey, I need this mental day off, or I need to come in, I need to take a week off of work, So therefore, if I can't say this to my supervisor, who's a white male, then how can I go to my therapist to say, hey, here's the things that I'm going through, who is the same thing, a white male, not understanding some of those underlying fears that I had as far as walking through the streets of New York or catching the subway, hoping not to get harassed. So I think that representation does matter when it comes to certain things where it's very important. And I can't speak for anybody else, but as far as being an African American, I think we need to seek out those people who kind of understand us, because that's more of a hurdle that we have to jump over when we're trying to explain, like, hey, here's the reasons why I feel like this. That's just my 2 cents.
You know me, I'm always going to play devil's advocate. I absolutely agree. I believe that representation matters in every single field. In the conversation, everyone should have the opportunity to build and to be able to go to someone that they're comfortable with. Hands down, the question is, does representation matter? In my book, yes, everywhere. Now, let's take a couple steps back. When I was working, so some of you know I'm also a mediator, and there is a new program that they're trying to do in the city, New York, that is about diversity. And I remember when they came to speak to the mediation group, and I don't want this to be about race, so I want to continue the conversation with disabilities and LGBT and gender. I want this to be a full conversation so we don't get stuck, not stuck, but I want the conversation to be a full conversation this evening. But I remember her saying, oh, we're going to have them check the box if they want to see an African American or Hispanic. Or I said, and so, I raised my hand. I said, excuse me. I love the fact that you're looking to expand the diversity pool of mediators and arbitrators. That is great. That is what we need. I said, but how exactly are people going to be able to request this? Having them check the box? Cool. I prefer to have it African American. I said, but if you call me to only do Black cases, you and I are going to have a problem because I'm a mediator and I understand what needs to happen. And I am certified in many things. And so we have to be careful sometimes that when we want the representation, who is repping us, number one, and do they not get stuck in, here's somebody, Hispanic, go speak to them, Black, go speak to them, they're disabled, because doesn't mean they still have the sensibility. Sometimes someone that looks like you may not want you to succeed, may not want to share all the information. So I want us to have a full conversation. And again, I want to make it 100% clear. Representation matters. The next question is, who's speaking for you? Does that matter? Because I love giving off the last webinar. And someone said, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble with churches because I said, you can reach beyond that. And I was texting someone else and I said, oh my God, I just wrote the same thing in my book. If you want some other educated people, you can go outside churches, especially when it comes to the African American community. Is there, but look at the disability community. And so I don't know, I invited a couple people that have disabilities that you can see. If you're on, please chime in and speak up and advocate, because I think that's something that needs to happen as well. No one assumes you need to have that advocate or that person that represents you unless us stand up and say, where is so-and-so? Where are the women at the top? Did you see the news yesterday where there was a man on a Zoom call and his 6-year daughter did the, walk in, look at the screen and said, Daddy, where's the women? There's no girls here. And he said he just turned red. And he was just like, oh my God, now I have to have this conversation with my 6-year-old. But she was smart enough to go, you have no girls there. That's bad, Daddy. And then walked out of the room, So yes, representation matters, but I want it to be the right representation. Anyone have thoughts on what that is? Do you care? Yes. Hey, Peter.
I think disability is still something that I'm very much vocal about in my own experience. But what I've found, especially with that specific area of disability, is that it's so individualized. individualistic. So each condition is almost different. I'm a stage manager, and I've actually last week I just reached out to my union. Like, there's a stage management group, and spoke and tried to see if anybody felt like they identified with the disability community, if they were handy capable, if they had any kind of condition, to please reach out and like just private message me, because it's much like a sensitive matter, like you shouldn't talk about, and it's something that I'm actually actively working at trying to change that conversation. But what is difficult is with the few people that I have connected with, that we have very different circumstances still, so we can relate to having challenges, but they're different stories. And so speaking for someone and being like, I speak for all disabled people, is very difficult. And even I don't always feel like I identify as a disabled person, because it's not just like, it's a journey that you have. So it's also how you identify.
I can't speak for all Black folks, and Black folks can't speak for me. And that's why I said, who represents you, and are they representing you, or as you said, from a whole? You know, it's not one disability or from one area. It's, here's some issues and concerns that we need to look at, and how do we begin to build on this to make it better for a whole, and then we get down into the subtext of things.
But I think a common thing is that there should just be diversity, especially in the workplace and when you have a meeting. Like, if it is all the same people, what are you talking about? You don't have an actual conversation. And that's just like, I just can't with this. Yeah, there needs to be a diverse conversation.
and diversity of thought.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what I say. If you have someone that's gone to the same college, and even if they all look different, doesn't really happen, but if they all look different sitting in that room, they all graduated from the same place, what do you get? 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, I'll be nice, you get around the same community of conversation. There isn't a diversity of thought. And then when there is, it's like, don't shake the boat. Well, I, for one, am here to not shake the boat, but to recognize that each of us come as individuals. And though you get checked under the diversity box of gender, race, LGBT, veterans, you know, that doesn't define who I am, and I don't think it defines who any of you are. What defines this is what we bring to the table. You know, I always say, what's your added value to your conversation, to disabilities or gender or race or whatever that is. So no, we're never going to be able to advocate and stand for everyone, but I think there is a way that how we each walk in our own lives, how we show up in the world, is part of representation. Any other thoughts in there before I keep going? Brian, you're being quiet. I don't want to put you on the spot, but yeah.
No, I mean, I think I'm mostly just listening, but I think that for me personally, as a gay man, first of all, I mean, with the representation and medical thing, I think it's actually very important, because, you know, there's a lot of issues that I might want to talk about that I might not be comfortable talking about with a straight man or with a woman. Not that they have any hangups, but it's a hangup of my own, right? That I'm just not comfortable speaking about certain things with people. I think as far as diversity, I mean, I've always worked for very diverse organizations and a small thing, but I think that we constantly have a need for improvement, right? Like, I've been working a lot the last couple of years with Rotary International, which, you know, has never had a female president. They've had one Black president in the history of the organization. And so as much as and they didn't even allow women in an organization until, you know, the late 90s, or the late 80s. So I think that being able to have that is one thing, but I think the other part is really stepping up personally and being visible as that. And it's not so much about filling any sort of quotas, but about really stepping into it yourself and being willing to open and be able to talk about that and have that conversation with people. Because for a lot of people, you know, personally, I reached this point where people want to have this discussion about involvement with the Black community, with the Asian community, whatever, and it's something that, you know, based on my personal experience, it's not something that I think about as much. I don't think about the Black gay experience as much as Black gay men do, or Black gay women do. And so how, you know, but being able to be there and be open to the conversation, I think, is an important part of how we express that diversity as well.
No, I agree. We have to be willing to step outside of what we know or our own personal issues. I can't ever say, you know, we talk about, I can't say I know what it's like to be a Black male. I have more chances of walking out, not really, but I have more chances of walking out my door and making it down the street and making it home than my Black nephew or another Black man just minding their business. This is the reality of what it is. Now, it's getting kind of shaky. It's kind of fair game, but, you know, stats are, that's what it is. So, but can I sympathize? You know, I think some of I work as an advocate for the U.S.-Israel relationship. People go, well, how you getting in that with folks from Israel? Doesn't mean that I know everything or I know the struggle. It means that I can empathize with the struggle. I can empathize with the work that needs to be done. I can stand up and be counted for. What I also say on that is, I will stand up for you, but when it's time, will you stand up for me? And that's where I think we need to really be aware of, one, who we put to represent us and who doesn't. And I swear I had the craziest dream. And again, I saw a question, so feel free to jump in when you need me. That I was somewhere yesterday, and I don't know, this is really bad, but Reverend Al Sharpton was there. And I was somewhere where I was producing an event, and I walked by and I said hello to the volunteers, and the women did not want to say hello to me. And I was just like, And they were like, oh, we don't speak to Black people. And I was like, well, thank you for letting me know. And so and I was walking toward, okay, my crazy dreams. I don't know, it's pandemic. But I was just like, I would love to introduce you to them, but they don't want to say hello to me. So what sucks for them is I'm actually in charge right now. And so they're excused from their volunteer position. But it was just like, you know, and I hope you learn to say hello. And then I woke up. But I've been in that situation before. And I think many of us have, where no matter where you are, even if you have the quote unquote right representation of that moment, people will come with their perceived notions. Are you going to jump in?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I was more thinking about how, like, I mean, this ties into literally everything we've talked about so far, but once you mentioned the diversity in thought, diversity of thought, I was considering my own personal experience in applying for law school. And I was thinking, like, the whole process seems to be very catered toward, you know, early 20s, fresh out of college, you know, having gone to a great school, had great grades and all of that. You know, that's pretty standard for a lot of graduate schools, but specifically for law school. And the more I thought about it, the more frustrated I felt, because what if I didn't go to, you know, a great school, if I didn't have the means to, and I went to, let's say, because of, for example, my race, and let's say I was stuck in a cycle of poverty, and I went to do maybe like 4 years here and there, like, you know, at a community college, then I would feel completely discouraged from the process altogether. It's been discouraging for me as an adult continuing education just to go through the process. But I'm just thinking of all of the things, all of the overlapping identities that would be considered minorities that would negatively affect and experience many steps of the way.
And that's where, again, a positive representation matters. So you say that to me, and I'm going to be like, oh, I know exactly who you need to speak to. because they've been through that process before, and they are a partner in a law firm as a Black man here in New York City, that though it's not a woman, he can at least, he mentors young lawyers. He can at least get you, help you round up. And so, yes, that's where representation does matter, because sometimes people you're trying to navigate. I think we're all trying to navigate right now, but you're trying to navigate sometimes, and you're just like, who do I reach out to that may be able to guide me, that is similar thought process of mine, or not even similar, but can understand from which I have come. When I have a big thing about the justice system and jury duty. Though I understand it is all of our duty to serve, I always go, God forbid I lost my mind and I have to go sit in front of a jury of my peers. I don't know how many Black ballerinas that lived in Europe, that owned a business in Japan, that had a strip joint, that produced for television, that worked for celebrities, that have their own diversity. I don't know how many of those are going to be sitting at that table. Mm-hmm. I don't know what those peers are going to look like. So we are already at a deficit when we say a jury of our peers. Where is the representation? And then I'm going to maybe hope that the judge sympathizes with me, or the other attorney goes, God, that background's kind of crazy. Let's take a second look. Who knows? So as we think about representation, I always like to say, let's think beyond where we sit. So like you said, to where we want to go, or the possibilities to be. There's a great commercial out now of a woman Black surfer. And she was like, I love surfing, but I couldn't find anyone else that looked like me that was, you say, hang 10. So she was like, so I created my own group. Look at the amazing actress that's on Broadway, that they rebuilt the back of the stage to get her wheelchair, and then she wins. Yes.
Can I add to that? Sorry, Leslie. But just want to add to that, Nisha, as well, is that, going back to what Leslie said, is that you should create your group if you can't find that representation, and not to I guess market or toot my own horn, as they say, but that's how the Village Collective came about as well. So I left corporate America a little bit over a year and a half ago, and when I started my own company, I was talking to VCs. I was going out trying to find people that look like me to help advance my particular startup. And that definitely didn't happen. So what I did was I literally got 10 friends together, had a breakfast at WeWork, and we literally just sat around and talked about how we could help one another. And that's how the Village Collective grew over the past year and 18 months or so, is being in part because there was other people out there that were struggling through the same things, and not just, other Black entrepreneurs, because the Village Collective is made up of, first generation immigrants, Black, white, Asian, whatever they may be, but they came together as a collective group. So, for example, you're going through this with this application process to law school as well. I'm sure there's other people like yourself out there going through the same things. What I would do some scouring around, LinkedIn, to see if there's already a LinkedIn group that's out there, and if there's not, create one, and other people will join it to give you that reinforcement that you need. Sorry to jump in there, but I just wanted to. That was so timely to give that piece of information.
That was helpful. Thank you.
That's perfect. I mean, the Cavu group started the same way. As I looked around and said, what is my next thing? And I kept saying, I hate the way that diversity and inclusion is being used. I hate that it's just a check box. I hate that it's being tossed. I hate that no one's having real conversations so that people can figure out, how do we move this forward together? How are we just keep showing up? The reason this is not working in companies is because you keep checking a box and throwing people together, but no one's taking the time to figure out, you're dealing with people. So how do we have a conversation on how we actually include people? Yes, Peter, go jump in. Yo, is that a yes?
So I think like some of the diversity inclusion work that I first started being a part of was like very much going around the wheel and seeing where you hold privilege, and it really is about like if you really want a diverse work environment, if you want a diverse hospital that you go to or health center, you need to, it's a collective action. And that means that you identify within yourself where you do hold privilege, because each of us on this call hold privilege in some respect. We all may fit into some part of trying to push the the diversity inclusion lens forward in different ways, but we all hold privilege in some respect too. So that's speaking up for ourselves and for the greater the greater community.
We have to use the privilege that we have. If you are truly about, hey Randy, if you are truly about advancing the representation, the diversity, the inclusion, diversity of thought, then we owe it to ourselves to stand up and rise up. And that is to say when there is an unjust, but to also have solutions to the unjust. If you're always with your fist up in the air, ready to go, or a flag going, what is that doing past showing, okay, that's great, they did that. Where are we moving this to say, okay, let's have the conversations. How do you feel? What is working? What isn't working? This is how I would like to be represented. You know, I think I told the story last week when I went to a job and they start effing me and blah, 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 because that's how they spoke to the salespeople. And I said, sorry, no. That's not how you will speak to me. I speak to everyone like that. Well, today's a new day. Will not speak to me that way. Sorry. And, you know, they were like, the new girl's crazy. And I was like, so I'm crazy then, but unacceptable. And so I didn't allow it to happen, you know, and you can't always look, we're all tired, right? You know, there's a thing going around. I'm tired of having to fight. Why do I have to keep teaching people how we want to be treated? Because if you don't teach people how you want to be treated or how you want to be represented, people take it upon themselves to figure out how you want to be represented. You know, I was on something earlier today. It was LGBT. How are you going to add LGBTQ Pride Month into your office? And, you know, it was great. But I mean, the first thing was just like, is it always drag queens? You know, I mean, I was a little offended. And I'm like, well, I don't have a right to be offended. It's not my world, but I can at least say I believe I'm an advocate and a champion, and I've been called an ally because you don't name yourself an ally. But can we think of something else? It's just like, you know, for Chinese New Year, this bigger than dragons. You know, though they represent, there's something bigger than that. And until we speak up, if representation matters, to say, I understand this has worked. Here's some new options. Randy, you know I'm gonna put you right on the spot. So Randy is also part of my council, the Cavu group. I've known Randy for I don't know how many years. We don't need to talk about that part. But I also remember when Randy was not in his chair. And he is in a chair now. And I love him because he was like, I'm trying to talk to my wife. And she will get on. You talk about somebody that's ready to roll and represent, and not, no pun intended on the roll, but they're right there. But speak about even, I mean, I love to hear from you even about traveling and having, just what happened to you all even in the last couple months, and you starting your travel agency that doesn't focus on, but highlights disability.
Okay. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm fortunate because I do like to travel, and I was introduced back to travel after my accident, because I traveled a lot before I got injured. But after my motorcycle accident, I didn't really think I could travel anymore. And I went to a charity golf event, and I remember bidding on a cruise. And the guy that actually won the cruise found out that he outbidded me and gave it to me. When I went on that cruise, it was good and bad because I found out things that I just didn't know about traveling and being disabled. And once that happened, it kind of changed things.
So
You got to change things. And I found out that what was important about being prepared and also planning ahead. And once I began to do that, I realized that people that are disabled do not travel because of these type of reasons and situations that come about. I didn't know that cruise ships had so much carpet. And I didn't understand how getting on and off planes, how difficult it was, and how to prepare and what to say to TSA, what to say when you're ordering tickets, what to say when you are speaking to hotels. And I said, a lot of people do not travel because of that reason. And I said, I don't want anybody to go through that like I went through it. So that's when it gave me the idea of starting a travel agency, but specializing in ability travel and also specializing in autism travel, because I knew so many people that had children that were autistic, and with that autism, they would not travel because it would be more frustrating and it would be more trouble than enjoyment. So traveling with my wheelchair basketball team, we recently went to Wichita, Kansas for our national tournament.
Don't give the whole story because it's in my book.
Okay. Well, we have a rehab that sponsors our team. And when the COVID-19 really began to get really big in late February, it was like a little buzz about maybe we should go. And then when March came, it was like March 10th or 9th. I think it was the 9th. They said, we're not sending you. The hospital's not going to be liable. We're canceling all your tickets, canceling your hotels, renting cars, everything. We cannot send you because we don't want to be liable. So what many of my teammates did, I remember I was sitting at work and I was really frustrated. And I got a text from somebody and said, Coach, what are we going to do? This is wrong. We worked all year for this. And somebody's just going to walk in and take it, something that we should have won. And I said, well, listen, after a while, I get off work at 5. We'll get together about 6 as a team and we'll kind of talk. And when we got together, it was like, hey, we can raise this money. And I was like, yeah, we can. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I don't know, 24 hours to come up with $20,000 was a tall order.
So can I fast forward a little bit for time?
Yes.
Sorry, not to cut you off, but long story short, they were able to travel. But there was a lot of things that went awry as part of their travel. In comes the advocate, is what I'm going to say. And that is Kimberly, who's there, who is Randy's wife. And I received a call at, I don't know, at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, like, listen, this is what happened. What do we do? And it wasn't that she didn't know what to do because they had done everything that they were supposed to do and had the representatives from the airlines there to do what they were supposed to do. And again, long story short, it just didn't happen. And so even though there are representatives in places that are supposed to do what they're supposed to do, and that they as a team and Kimberly and someone that is able had done everything that was asked for them to do, the representative that was there for the airline did not. And that was a representative that was there for those that are traveling that has a disability. So again, it comes back to everyone that represents or is supposed to be your representative in your field may not be the best person to handle that position at that time. So it crosses the board of travel. So Randy and Kim have this travel agency now that they can share with others that here's what you need to be prepared for, or here's where we know has worked. So you need representation like that. So when we think about it, it's not only in the office, it's in the travel, it's in medical fields, it's in the education field, it's in stores, it's in books. I mean, look what happened for Barnes and Noble during Black History Month. where they took a bunch of books and they were like, we're just going to put them all here. And it was just all wrong. There was no consultant. And that's what I read about it. Clearly was no consultants to say, hey, this is what needs to happen. And Peter, like you said, you can't answer for everyone in the disability space or disability space, but what you can do is say, here's what I'm specially on. Here's what I work with other colleagues that I know they know this piece of it. I would like to come together, and we as a collective will consult for this book signing, this travel, this Broadway show, this office layout, whatever it is. But we need to start. I'm not telling anybody what to do, but you're here, so that means it's important to you. So we as a collective do need to start to rise up and be able to have these conversations when we are in stores or when things are not comfortable. And you go, hey, like the little 6-year-old girl, there's no women here. Daddy, where are the girls? You know, I end up speaking on a panel because I saw someone speaking about diversity and inclusion. And that was their entire weekend. But guess what? There was not one person speaking about diversity and inclusion in the entire diversity and inclusion weekend. So I emailed them. I said, I noticed that you're speaking about it, but no one's having a conversation about what it is. Oh, no. We were still booking that speaker. But your conference is in a week. And they're like, are you available? I'll take that gig. Yes, because I'm going to help you. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Looks like Patricia may have a question or a comment.
Oh, I just wanted to comment. I'm being quiet because I know you guys have been together for a while, so I'm catching up. But I was going to say, it's almost like the way I would look at it is representation is foundational because, as you say, Leslie, and I think Kim earlier, it's almost like, for me, like, I'll just give you an example. Like, I was getting out of my 401k and I don't know the first thing about money, and I was looking for somebody to help me. And I knew that I wanted a female because I know it's such a heavily, the stock market and the financial industry is so heavily male. And I was like, I want a female to represent me. So from that, I had the diversity of having 4 or 5 different females to choose from to say that's the point, right? It's like, I could say, to your point, Leslie, like, all of these women, just because they were born female and they have the same DNA as me, doesn't mean that they're all going to, I don't care what they look like, right? But they're all female. But to me, that's an important thing. And then from there, to your point, it's like, now the beauty is, because I'm represented there, I can choose the best person for me that I feel the best connection to, right? So it's like, you almost look at it as like foundational, because you really do have to have that breadth of options and that diversity of options. And then from there, it's like, okay, now let me find. But the beauty of, without having that representation, we don't have any of those choices.
You'll get so excited. The first one, the only one. Well, something's not right with the system if we're still doing the first one and the only one.
Right.
You know, we need to have, we should have, I'm gonna start saying we should have, stop telling people what they need to do. What we should have, this is my work for myself, we should have an option of agencies, of people, of thought. We go into a store and you can find 15,000 white t-shirts, right? Do you need 15 white t-shirts? Well, maybe you do, because maybe one has more cotton, maybe one has a label, one maybe doesn't have a label. But you know what we used to say, we were in the fashion industry. You're not adding a third sleeve to a t-shirt. So though the gender, the race, whatever check boxes we go under may be there are specialties. There is connection. There is a understanding that you look for. And that's why, so it goes back to, again, I've never had a Black doctor, doesn't mean I don't want a Black doctor. I've I've been able to have very good doctors at what I've had. I don't go looking for, because once I like you, and I need you not to retire. I need you to be there. You know my madness. Let's move on. But that's just me. But to have the option. So there's something in in the workshops that I do. There's one question, and I want you to think about it. I was going to use this tonight, but what nationality or what gender is your dentist? And so I know that's a crazy question, isn't it? So when I do that in corporations, people are like, come on now. The reason, the normality is because Iranian, I know, that you usually choose a dentist that looks like you, that you're comfortable with. And when I said it to my dentist, who happens to be an Indian woman who's married to a white Irish man, and the two of them together are a straight comedy team when I'm in there. And that's why I love them, because they're a straight comedy team. And so I said it to her, and she was like, oh, I'm going to be quiet now. They've only been Indian. And I'm like, that's okay. But it's something to think about, because when we say representation, how far does it go? Is it representation or is it comfort? Is it comfort and representation? Is it representation as long as you don't have to be part of it? So these are, we throw out the banner. This is what the talk is. But I also want to have these conversations because I want us to start thinking about different layers to what it means. So when you're out there, wherever that is in your communities, and somebody else says to you, representation matters, you may say, well, how exactly does it matter? How exactly are you making it matter? Because these are the questions that I ask when I'm dealing with corporations. I want this. Why do you want that? Yes.
Just so you know, we have 9 minutes, the hours. One thing I wanted to ask, I'm curious about is, so I was on a call earlier this week with a bunch of people from within the travel organization. It was a diversity inclusion discussion as well, and one of the things that, not to be too long-winded, but what can we take as individuals? What can we take away to try to understand all the parts of the diversity wheel? Because I guess I struggle with trying not to overlook the privilege that I have, and trying not to gauge, I guess the disadvantages that I have compared to someone else's disadvantage. You know what I mean? So how can I, any type of I guess words of insight to try to be more open and see some of the other, other disadvantages that people have, to be that advocate for them. Does that make sense? I'm trying to, no, it's kind of complicated.
No. So it's not about being an advocate for someone unless you believe and understand, and that's part of a walk, and you really want to see things happen. You can be a champion of, have you heard, have you seen? I believe you can't be an ally. Someone has to bless that onto you to make you an ally. That you're living the work, you're doing the work, they see you, they believe in you, you're there all the time. What I can say about privilege, I say if you have the privilege, which we all have, let me take one step back before privilege. Diversity. We are all diverse. I don't care if we're all the same color in the room or not. We are all diverse, number one. The privilege that we have, I think you use the privilege to have the conversations. We're using the privilege that we have now to create these webinars and have these conversations so that each of us have a platform to voice something new to share. That each of us starts connecting, on, like I said, put your LinkedIn's in, start connecting with people. You now know you have someone that's in the travel agency, disability, you have this. To begin to have the conversations to understand what is it that they may want you to advocate for. We just can't assume that everyone wants somebody to advocate for them. We may be good, You know, when I saw someone that was going in as a diversity and inclusion officer, she was like, oh my God, I can't wait to go in and I can't wait to change everyone's schedule to make it better. I said, whoa, you may be going in messing up someone's nice little schedule that they have with their family, time they get off, what they do. You have to ask people, what are your concerns? How may I be of service? See, that's the difference. It's about how can I be of service to the cause that you have. That's what's important. Okay. So if you're going to take something away, ask the questions. Don't assume. One, walk in your, like I said, you have to walk in who you are. Who are you as a person and what are you bringing to the table? Be able and be willing to share that. And then be able to ask others, how can I help you? Or say, here's something that you may be interested in that I found out information for. Be of service first. Did I answer you? Yes.
Yes.
I had a quick question, and
Sorry to interrupt, Brian. Just want to say this. Everyone, if you want to connect, put your LinkedIn within the chat, as well as I'm going to put a survey in here. If everyone can please complete that quick survey. Literally takes less than a minute, 4 questions. That's it. Sorry, Brian. I apologize.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback really quick because I think while it doesn't have the same, it's nowhere near the same experiences of racial diversity or sexuality or male female, but I think that one of the things is when I've been having these discussions that we kind of forget about is things, and I think it's being open to other people's diversity. For example, I've been sober for 25 years, and so much of what we do is based around alcohol, and especially in the workplace, but in a lot of things. How do we make inclusion for people who aren't comfortable with that or who might be struggling with that on a bigger thing? Mental health, I think, is a huge thing with people that are struggling with mental health issues, and I think that's something that somehow we have to be more open to that conversation, and because it's people are not as comfortable talking about that, and it's not as obvious. Also, it's something that's sort of like, oh, I don't think about this, and so we're gonna have a cocktail party every Thursday night, and that alienates people within our communities, sometimes. So I think that's just something I wanted to kind of throw in there.
That's great point. So, someone comes to me and I'm like, I know who you have to speak to because my friend just invented the new app, Loopsy. I'm going to mess it up, but it's he's advocating to have sections in stadiums that are for those that don't drink, that recover to recovery. You wouldn't know it, but you could book it so that the cocktail waitress is not coming around every 2 seconds going, do you want to drink? And that there's boxes that don't have to buy a certain beverage amount to reach. So he's out there advocating for that and speaking about, and he's been very vocal during this time of us being on pause, of mental health and those in recovery. So yes, those are conversations we need to have. I've been saying when we go back into whatever this is, we go back into some type of office, if that's where you have to go, you need to have a diversity and inclusion consultant, a mental health consultant, and a grief consultant. Because those are the 3, before anyone does any type of work, we're going to need to deal with as we go back. Because someone has had to be under those umbrellas, if not all of them, during this time. So we definitely have to be open to outside of what we know or think of as diversity or what may be an issue, to understand we need to meet people where they are and offer those things. At a cocktail, I got caught, and Brian, how anal I am about so many different little things, but I got caught on not thinking about pregnant women. And I saw her go, and I went running to her, and I was like, I have juice, I have this. And she was like, no, I'm good with the water. I'm like, no, I have things that have flavor, because I wanted to make sure that, and from that day on, I never did that again. Because I realized, though I was thinking about people that didn't drink alcohol, I didn't think about a pregnant woman who may still want something with flavor outside of that, didn't want a soda. So I think there's so many things that we do need to think of, and I know we can't do all of them, but awareness of our differences and our likeness means so much moving forward. So that is what I task everyone to do when that we get off of this, to be open to be different and to ask what is needed from someone. How can I be of service? If any of you, I'm going to throw this in because I wasn't writing my LinkedIn. If I'm not connected to anyone that's here on LinkedIn, I'm under LinkedIn under Leslie Short. I am thinking about the topic next week until I see yours on belonging. Does belonging equal inclusion? Because belonging is the new buzzword in corporate America right now. And so I would love to hear thoughts on, do you need to belong, or is inclusion what you're looking for? Because to me, they're two different things. I want to always say thank you for joining me. We could go on for another 2 hours because I think there's so much to discuss, whether it is gender, whether it's race, whether it's veterans, whether it's disability, whether it's LGBTQ, T++. I think we all as individuals need to be aware the next time you are on a plane that someone that's in a chair does not have their chair when they're on the plane, and therefore has a difficult time going to the restroom and or cannot go until they land. And when they land, they still have to wait for their chair. I want you all to think about that. I want you to think about each of what you have to deal with and go, how do I approve this as I look at this? It's to you.
That is our time. Right on time at that too. Well, a little bit over, 30 seconds over. Okay. I'll keep the webinar open for another few minutes so everyone can connect via LinkedIn. And I do implore you, please fill out the survey. It literally takes 30 seconds to fill out the survey. Your feedback is greatly appreciated as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys joining me.
Talk soon.
Talk soon, definitely.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Miss Kim. I'll talk to you later. Oh, you staying? Oh, Kim, you good? Kimberly Pulling.
Yes, I'm good. Oh, I saw it's two Kims.
Okay, that's what I was like. I speak to the other Kim all the time. I was like, you good? How's everything?
Everything is good. No complaints. No complaints. Just looking at how to get everybody connected on the LinkedIn, but I don't know if maybe I just copy and paste it and then go back.
Yeah.
Word.
Don't mean to interrupt, but Kim, Kim and Randy. So I'm a part of this other group with Expedia, and
Hey, how are you? Expedia is like one of my worst vendors. Oh my God, they're hard.
Oh, sorry then. But I'll definitely see how I can include you on some of those conversations. Like earlier in the week, I was on a conversation with a bunch of their global team on diversity and inclusion, and we were having discussions. To think about it, everybody that was there, I mean, we were diverse as far as nationality goes, but we were not diverse. I didn't even think about like disability being included in there as well too, because some of the things we were discussing.
I taught you nothing?
I'm sorry?
Have I taught you nothing?
I mean,
I speak about disability?
well, here's the thing about it though. Like I have to fight what I know about battles first. You know, this guy was telling me I spoke about how my fear of wearing the mask and everything, and this guy
Stop recording.
It stopped recording. Yeah. And this like literally came in and was like, "Oh, it's not that bad here in Chicago." Blah 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 blah. Like you'll be okay. So I had to fight that battle first in this discussion before I got on these other discussions, though. But I'll definitely see how I could introduce you to them to be part of some of these discussions, because it's interesting how these people at Expedia are making like these policies or making these like rules and everything when you truly
never consider.
You truly don't have the full spectrum of people of these policies that will be affected by it. So I'll definitely.
That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing that we've heard being involved in not only just the travel industry, but just being in the disabled community, what we have noticed is just the fact that, and I guess I'm more aggressive. I'm like more the pit bull kind of thing. My husband's more kind of laid back and give a lot of grace. And I'm like, okay, I've given as much grace as I'm given in this area, especially with the airport thing. But what we notice, like even with Expedia, is just the simple things like being able to recognize and get people to understand truly what a handicap accessible room looks like. So even in how they structure their setup on their website, something simple like that. Sometimes they think, oh, it's just enough to say it's mobility assisted, or they have to be able to learn the terms and put those terms in what they're putting out there. So that way, when we go looking and we need a room that's specific to his needs, they need to consider that, because I've gone into rooms, especially in New York, where that's how we started our travel agency. I moved half the furniture in one of the rooms in one of the hotels in New York and Queens, and it pissed me off. And I said, I'll never do this again. I've left the furniture in the middle of the room when we checked out the next day, but they told us that the room was accessible. And of course, we use Expedia for everything, right? Because that's our go-to. And that's where we went. And I'm like, these guys obviously have no clue of what handicap accessible looks like. And then of course he's inconvenienced. So that's why I went back and I posted what I said, is that these corporations don't recognize the fact that having these people with this type of diversity helps them legally, and it helps them financially, because one, I'm coming to you once I tell you that he can't get into that room and you sold us the room. And then when we tell us you sold us the room, we're uncomfortable. They're like, oh yeah, that's fine. No, it's not fine. When you have able-bodied people making decisions for people that are disabled, that is never fine, because if they're not included in that conversation, what you get is a lawsuit, a ADA complaint. They don't recognize that. And what they're getting to the point where in their community, they're getting fed up. And once they start getting fed up, like African Americans, for the most part, don't write letters. They don't complain. And when we started getting to the point where we're like, listen, if you do these things the right way and you handle things accordingly, what you'll get is a better response. But just complaining is nothing. So, which is why Leslie got that call in the middle of the night, like, girl, it's about to be on in this airport. You're going to see me on the news. And she just responded immediately, because she knows, like, it's rare that I reach out to, people. But with this one, I was like, I had a whole team and they were about to take half the team and put them on a different plane. They stood their chairs, they couldn't walk. It was so crazy, But
I don't think you even understand how honored I was that you called me, and it was like, okay, let's do this. And that's what it's about. You need to have the connections of, sometimes you're too in it to say, okay, here's the steps. Nope, go back. Bring this, do that.
Right.
That's how.
It wasn't until I told them, I said, well, first of all, it got really loud in there, because my New York came out and my cop came out at the same time. So all that going on together, it just changed it to a whole nother, like, if I was on the video, I would have been viral. And that's how bad it was, because I told them straight out. I said, if you close those doors and that plane takes off, I'm suing you, period. It's end of story. There's no conversation. There's no trying to fix it. There's no conversation we need to have. And next thing you know, it's like, oh, we're going to hold the plane. I said, you better hold that plane. I said, because I'm telling you right now, you took their chairs, they couldn't walk. You basically made them disabled. I said, and what you did was against the law. So we had that conversation. And if I didn't know that, then it would have been a whole nother situation. But I had worked with disabilities advocates before. I worked in the Mayor's Disability Council in Jacksonville. So there's so many different things that we've experienced that I said, you don't even know who you're dealing with. And he was one of the people. And I said, he worked on the Mayor's Disability Council. He was selected and worked with the mayor for Jacksonville. I said, this is not going to happen. You don't know us very well. You don't know really who we're dealing with.
I wish, but we could, and we will eventually have an African-American roundtable.
Oh, yeah. Right there.
I really want to do that. I just got to figure out how to do it without. I want to do that, because the conversation needs to be, we know nothing. We don't ever know anything.
We're gonna set up a podcast eventually in the next couple of weeks. I'm doing another book, so I'm trying to finish that up. I got a deadline. I'm procrastinating, so pray for me. But so yeah, but once we finish that, hopefully by Sunday, I'll be done with that. And then I know Randy's doing a podcast with his brothers, and then we're doing a podcast together. and just opening up kind of our lives in a way, but talking to couples and stuff, but it's African American based. So that might be an opportunity to come in that way and have that conversation.
It's
So
easier for me to join the conversation right now to have it for the moment.
right.
Full
Right.
one. I just can't wait to, I can't wait to like be able to bust out. So
right.
they're gonna be sorry that I held on. I say a lot now. There's much more that I want to say.
Right. And you have to be very diplomatic in this time because it's so new. But I think that once you get it running, and it'll definitely blossom into what it really needs to be. Because even listen to what you're saying as far as having a mental health person, and when you said it, I thought about the EAPs, but the problem with the EAPs is that people don't trust them. So you know what I mean? And rightfully so, because the MTA one was bad, and they'll have your information in Connecticut quicker than you're in Grand Central, but it's in Connecticut by the time you walk out the office.
And that's why I say consultants.
Yeah, and see that's it, and I think when they do that, it makes it better. Because even our chaplains were loose lips. So we had a rabbi that was our chaplain. He had loose lips, so we had to be careful. Because they're like, "How how's the family?" And you start talking. Next thing you know, they're putting it on everybody else's business. So. What?
Thank you for
she's a
joining. I
chaplain?
appreciate it. What happened?
Oh, I didn't know you was a chaplain. My husband said you was a chaplain.
Oh yeah, I'm a chaplain.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Still a ministry. I do a lot of chaplaincy. I do more chaplaincy than I'll preach every now and then, but I prefer to do chaplaincy. I'm quite busy right now with this covert.
Yes, I'm sure. But yeah, we definitely want to. I'll talk to you about the chaplaincy. We'll talk about that later because I still wanted to do that. My husband said I couldn't do it, but we'll see.
Major, you guys, do you have the connection, or you have everyone's email?
Yeah. I connected with Randy on the on LinkedIn, and what I'll do, I'll introduce you to.
He won't get offended. He's all right.
Connect with Kim.
No, let me see where yours is. Okay, I think I got yours in here.
I don't think I'm connected.
No. He's coming over now. So funny.
Wait, Randy and Yvette, we're not connected on LinkedIn. How about that?
Yeah, you're.
Oh, well, we're gonna fix that.
You're in Jacksonville?
Yeah.
Oh, that's where I'm from.
Are you from Jacksonville? Nice.
We don't.
We live
Born
in
and raised.
Ocean Way.
Ooh, why? Why?
Because
Hey.
it's a brand new house, and the majority of people here, all the rednecks, is they selling their property and they moving down south. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I grew up out east side. Straight.
Out east.
Yep,
What?
Straight hood.
Straight. Our kids graduated from Gilbert.
Yeah, that's where my parents went. Well, my mom.
Randy's dad went to Gilbert.
Yep.
Jacksonville.
That's where my grandparents went, and then my home school would have been Jackson, but I actually.
They made Jackson a magnet. It's a full magnet now.
Yeah.
White people try to take the school back over.
Oh yeah, I graduated from Paxton, so I got shipped and went to Paxton. But
you sound like a Paxton kid. Okay. I'm joking.
But no, it's nice to meet you. What I'll do is I'll actually send a message via LinkedIn and connect with my two contacts at Expedia, and basically introduce your travel agency as well too, and basically say that I think you should be included in those conversations as well. We do like a quarterly call. So I think they do calls more than that, but I only jump on the quarterly call. But yeah, I think it's great to be in that conversation. So,
Absolutely, especially during this time when you got so much transition going on, and we deal with so many different vendors. And I guess do we have to clear that with a host agency? I don't think so, right? I don't think we have to clear it with them. Yeah, we ain't worry about them.
But it was nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you, especially somebody from the Ville. Yay, too far.
Canadian monster. See what this thing's doing?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, the world, it's like 6 degrees of separation. So it's always somebody knows somebody. I bet you if we connect on Facebook, we have like 300 some plus connections. Yes, that seems how it. It's so, that's how small this world is becoming. So
I'm gonna leave that up to two of you. Okay, guys.
Have a great one.
Thank you. We shall talk to you.
thanks for having us. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.